Chapter 4, BadMowerFinger. My friend Tim lived in Findlay, Ohio in the fall of 2018. I'd met Tim through a series of interactions online. The two of us had been making videos and doing drugs when we hung out. Tim was an intravenous user of crystal. Even though I gave up needles back in spring, I still shot crystal with certain friends of mine when I hooked them up with drugs. If I knew I was spending time with Tim, I fully expected to be poking holes in my arms. Findlay, Ohio was 45 minutes south of my house, en route between Perrysburg and Columbus. I left the hotel room in Columbus the morning after I was ditched by the African girl from the website. I decided to spend the day at Tim's place before heading back to my house. I supplied Tim with the drugs he needed. Tim and I shot drugs and made videos for the rest of the day. I left for home later that night. I knew I had been putting off that final lawn mowing of the year. I knew it was going to take a couple of days. The riding mower had been inactive ever since that day in late spring when it mowed its final time. That time the engine exploded as I narrowly avoided a large fine from the city. I had borrowed a push mower from my friend Jane when I came back from Florida a few days prior. I was dreading pushing a mower, which wasn't even self-propelled, over an acre of what was once again far overgrown grass. I woke up the next day and blew down some hot rails. I checked the messages on my phone and began my daily ritual of interacting and video making. At one point, I went out front and began push mowing my yard. As I mowed, I continued replying to messages and interacting on my phone. One girl from the site was hell-bent on coming to see me. I had work to do. The girl wanted to take a taxi the 4 hours from Cincinnati to my house. At first, I didn't think she was serious. By the time I finished mowing my front yard, I had to block the girl completely. I went back inside midday to take a break from mowing. I decided to live stream on the website that afternoon. As usual, due to my meth consumption, I didn't reach climax. I was sweaty, I was overheated, I was frustrated. Later that afternoon, I managed to break the compulsion. When I turned off the live stream camera, I got my hands free again to get some more actual work done. When I stepped out back to mow some more, I shook my head at the sight. I had managed the front yard. The grass in the backyard was longer, thicker, and it covered a much larger area, an almost endless sea of green. I knew I couldn't get it finished that day, but I had to try to get through as much as possible. As the light disappeared that evening, I decided to leave the last quarter of my yard for the next morning. The grass the farthest back in the yard was the thickest and longest. It had given me trouble back when the riding mower was working. I was sure it would be no picnic with the small unpropelled push mower. I made it to the line in the yard where the far side of my barn lined up on the left. In the middle, at that line, was a lone flowering pear tree. Beyond that, the grass and weeds were a solid carpet of foliage stretching to the far tree line. The width of the area was at least 3 times the length. I planned to cut it in rows the next day, rectangles which would gradually become smaller as I finished. I figured I still had about 3 hours to go. Since I had thoughts of letting go of my house and Northwest Ohio completely, I knew it was not just the last time I would have to mow that year. I knew I was about to be done mowing that yard forever. I woke up the next morning with the goal of a mowed lawn in mind. I did drugs and I got to work. Mowing that morning was different than the previous day. The grass was even longer. I went slower that morning. The grass was thicker. I only overlapped half as much with each pass of the mower. The grass was damp. The drizzle of rain from an overcast and cloudy sky mixed with the morning dew. Every few steps, I had to push the handle of the mower down towards my feet to pop the deck and blades up into the air. If I didn't clear the blades, they would clog with wet clumps of grass. Then the mower would shut off. I then had to bounce the mower up and down on the ground to clear out the obstruction before I could pull start the mower again. Clumps of wet grass piled up next to the rows as I mowed, in the rows I was about to mow. That added to the difficulty. The clumps I ran over again were enough to clog the mower and stop the blades. The grass in the rows was barely cut as the blades slowed and very often stopped completely. Hours passed, my original time frame left behind like clumps of grass. Finally I saw an end in sight, another 5 rows left. Another half hour at the most. I was getting impatient and my mind was checking out. I began to take any shortcuts I could. While holding the handles together to keep the engine running, I bent my knees and stretched my right arm towards the mower deck. I reached my hand into the chute opening, which led from the mower blades, to grab a clump of clogged grass. I heard the loud thud at the same time I felt it. My brain broke in reaction. In one motion, I yanked my arm back to my body as I stood up and released the mower handle with my other hand. The engine of the push mower cut off. The air in the backyard around me became silent and still, a sharp contrast from the hours of loud lawn mowing. The last echo of the engine left the neighborhood and my brain. As suddenly as silence had filled the air, the thoughts filled my mind. A million questions at once from all directions seemed to hit me in that first split second. Thoughts jumbled together and overlapped in my consciousness. I couldn't keep up. My rationale floated away with the last echoes of the then silent lawnmower engine. I had no answers, but the questions piled in. What was that terrible jolt I felt to the core of my body? What was that sound? What happened? What do I do? Do I still have fingers? Do I still have a hand? Stunned, I stood there next to a lawnmower in an almost fully mowed backyard. Time seemed to stop. It seemed like forever passed me by as I was hit with stupid questions and incomplete thoughts. My eyes, wide and unblinking. It was as if I was in a trance. Should I finish mowing? I'm almost finished. Do I look down? Yes I do. I looked down. When I saw what the mower blades had done, I snapped out of my stunned trance. The daze I had been in, it instantly dissipated. Adrenaline filled me up. I then had a very real sense of urgency. I had transcended. A wave of panic washed over me. 3 thoughts hit me at the same time. I'm far out in my backyard. I need to get to my house. I'm hurt, badly. I turned toward one of my back porches and I ran. I felt the edges of blackness as my focus became tunnel vision. Adrenaline kept my feet moving under me while I felt the somniferous effects and impending unconsciousness of shock. I kept running. I reached the screen door. My left hand fumbled as I shakily opened the door. I yanked the door open and I stumbled across the patio. I looked down. I saw the trail of red behind me as I reached the door to my gym. I crossed the side of my gym and reached the door to my kitchen as the edges of my field of vision closed to black. I felt as if I was floating as I stepped through the doorway into my kitchen. There in my kitchen, the pain hit. Though I never went fully unconscious, my legs took me no further than my kitchen. I managed to grab a dish rag from the handle of my stove before my weak and shaking legs succumbed to gravity. I was then on the floor. I writhed in agony as I wrapped the rag around my finger to stop the bleeding. I managed to send a couple texts as I first sprawled out onto the kitchen floor. I spent the next chunk of time in a semi-conscious and extremely painful heap on the Brazilian pecan floor of my kitchen. I lost concept of time, but I soon received a reply text from my friend Kate. I'll be at your house in half an hour. Though Kate only lived 15 minutes away in Bowling Green, she needed to drop her kids off at their dad's house. The pain was unrelenting. It didn't come in waves, it was one constant tsunami, and I was crashing under it continuously. At one point, I managed to stumble my way through the house to my bedroom. I scrounged up a couple of weak painkillers, a beta blocker, and some benzos. I took a handful of pills. It was futile. Kate walked in to find me back on the floor of my kitchen, still in the same amount of pain. The rag on my finger was soaked in blood. There was blood all over the floor. Hours passed that evening. Kate attended to me the best she could. I disliked hospitals. Kate was persistent with her attempts to take me to the emergency room. I knew I needed to go. I just didn't want to go. Finally, after 12 hours, the two of us agreed that Kate would take me to the emergency room after we had sex. Despite the pain from the mower accident, Kate and I managed a half hour of foreplay. When the time came for the actual intercourse, pain and drugs basically eliminated any chance of being able to rise to the occasion. That was when I thought of an idea. The prior 6 months, I had been involved in a BDSM dynamic with a girl who lived a few hours away in southern Ohio. The dynamic was intense and intimate. The girl had even put me on a schedule of tasks and videos I needed to do for her. Some videos were a daily requirement. Some were to be made on a certain day each week. Some gave me creative freedom to think up ways to please her and build our dynamic together. The day before, when I mowed my front yard and began mowing the back, I made a specific video to fill that creative requirement of the BDSM girl I was seeking to please. I created a video which ended up arousing the girl, and she gave me much positive feedback. First, I wrapped 15 elastic hair ties around myself. I then spent the next couple minutes trying to pee with the hair ties squeezing me tightly. It was difficult, it came out in spurts, but I managed to make it happen. I told Kate to hang on a second. There was an aspect of the previous day's video which was going to prove useful. It was a side effect I hadn't ever planned to implement. The pain in my finger persisted as I awkwardly wrapped myself with hair ties. In an act of carnal improvisation, with a bad mower finger, in pain, on drugs, and in a unique headspace, I consummated in a way I knew was a once-in-a-lifetime event. Kate and I moved rhythmically together as my makeshift splint did its job. It was the only time the two of us ever had intercourse. We had shared intimacy before, but never intercourse. In a weird way, I felt we had gone beyond sex that day. Kate then took me to the emergency room, after almost a full day without any professional medical treatment. The x-rays came back. The doctor explained what was going on. The mower blade had completely broken the bone in my finger at the first knuckle. All bone was pulverized from that point to my fingertip. The hole in the end of my finger was where the skin had popped and expelled the pulverized bone fragments. The remaining bone slivers and shards were floating loosely in the end of my finger. Internal splinters, sharp and jagged bone bits stabbing me from the inside. My finger had no solid structure from the knuckle on. It had begun to swell, and the pressure only added to the pain and discomfort. That afternoon, 3 days into yet another lawnmower battle with my lawn, Kate finished the 5 remaining unmowed rows in my backyard. It took her 20 minutes. I was done mowing the yard forever. After a summer of stress and problems and injuries, I was happy to be done. I didn't know it at that time, but I still had one last battle with my riding mower a few months later. For the time being, my focus was on my bad mower finger. By the next day, my finger had swollen to twice the size. I made an interesting video trying to relieve the pressure as I drew blood repeatedly with a 19-gauge steroid syringe. Every few days, I had to remake the metal and foam finger splint to accommodate the inflation and swelling. Eventually, I had to use 2 splints as one to fit over the finger. I never followed up with the orthopedic surgeon to remove the bone splinters.